Okay, so now that we know how to select and insert data into our database via our website using PHP, I need to talk to you a little bit about password hashing. So in our database here, we have a password column, and then we just can see verbatim the passwords of each of these users. That's incredibly insecure because your database can easily be hacked. And if you're just storing a password for your user, then hackers will be able to access their accounts and exploit their information and your database and all this sort of stuff. And you really don't want that. What you need to be able to do is hash those passwords and store the hashed version in your database. That's why when you sign up for websites or an account for something, you have to reset your password. And they send you a new password because they don't actually know, the database administrators, they don't know your password. They're only seeing the hashed version, which looks kind of something like this one right here. And that's not your password. That's kind of an encrypted version, which is what hashing is, of the password. And only you know your password. So if you forget, then you have to reset your password. And this doesn't tell a hacker anything about your password. And they'd have to run this through a brute force program that would take forever and would probably yield very little insignificant results to get them, to hack into your account. So that's why you need to hash your passwords. I'm going to show you right now how you can easily use PHP to hash your passwords and how to verify those passwords using a reverse function. So I created a file here called password_hash. Just add the bootstrap stuff that we added in these other files here, insert and index and so on and so forth. Clean up the PHP top here just to have the include for the connection, and we'll work with that later. And just change the title to password hashing, and I've done the same here with the level 1 heading. So let's just simply start by just creating kind of a static password and hashing it and displaying that value right here. So I'm just going to open up a PHP script, and in here I'm just going to create a variable called password, and then I'm going to use the password_hash function, and it accepts 2 arguments here. The first one needs to be the actual password. So let's just say my password, a really bad password. And the second one is an argument that needs to be passed in that tells it the algorithm to run it through. And all you really need to do is password_default. If you want to know more about this, you can go to the password hash function on php.net, and it tells you all about this function. And you see password default here. There's password bcrypt. And a whole bunch of stuff and information here on this function if you'd like to know more. So you could go ahead and do that as well. And now in the meantime, we're just going to use password default because that is good enough. And then let's go ahead and echo that password to see what it looks like. So save, and let's go to your page here. There is your hashed password. So that is a hashed version of my password. Now, how do you test to see if a certain password that a user uses against this to see if they have the correct password? We'll copy this. We're going to need this data because this is basically what's going to be stored in our database. So copy that. And now I'm just going to comment these 2 things out here. And I'm going to store the hashed password in a variable, which is this data right here. There we go. I'll just use single quotation marks there. So there's the hashed password. And that's what's going to be stored in the database in theory. And now we're going to use an if statement. And in the if statement, we're going to use the password_verify function. And it accepts a couple arguments here. It needs to be the password that it wants to test against. So we'll say a password. We'll just say that. And then the second argument will be the hashed password. So the one to test it against. So here we're using the password verify function. This is the password we're testing to see if it is the same as the hashed password. And it's not going to be correct because that's not what we created, my password. But this is, say, if you were to type in an incorrect password. So if this is correct, we'll say password is correct. And else we will say incorrect password. So save this. And now what we're going to do is on our site, it's going to store the hashed password. It's going to test to see if this is the correct password against the hashed version. And we'll see here. Incorrect password. And that would be the case because it is the incorrect password. Let's try my password. And let's see what that looks like. Password is correct. So it's testing my password against the hash password, which happens to be the correct password. Though we don't know that we don't know that as database administrators, whoever the user is, whatever they created their password, we're going to want to store a hashed version, which would look like this. And then when they log in, we want to test their password that they're typing into the input against the hashed version we have in our database. If it's correct, we can log them in. If it's incorrect, we can tell them, hey, you got to try again. So why don't we create just like a really simple static login form that's not using the database yet, but just like a really simple version to test this theory out. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to add a form here in our HTML. I just copied and pasted from a previous thing. I had it queued up. Basically, we have the form, action PHP. We're submitting to the same page. Method is post. And then label is just going to be password. It really doesn't really matter. What matters is the input here, which is just a type of password, and the name is password. Then we have an input button with the value of login and the name of login. Okay, so now that we have a form, it will look a little bit like this. There we go, just something simple. And we need to test to see if the password that the user typed into the input is the same as the stored password. So we'll say, let's just go right here. We're going to say if is set. And then in is set, we're going to check if the post login button was pressed, the form was submitted. And what we're going to do is basically grab this if statement right here, and we're going to paste it in here. And so we're going to verify the password that is typed in to the actual form. So that needs to not be my password, but be the post collection. And we need to test for password. And then we're going to compare it to the hashed password, which is what is going to be technically stored in the database. The variable will, right now we're just putting the actual hashed version, but this would be pulling from the database in theory and then storing it into the hashed password. We're going to put it in here as an argument. And then now we should actually be able to test to see if the password we type in is correct. So here we have the password login form. I'm just going to type in something gibberish and log in. Incorrect password. So now let's try typing in my password. See what happens. Password is correct. So there we go. I typed in the right password. It unsalted it, I guess you could say. It did the password verify function, and it compared the hashed version with what we typed in. If it's correct, then we're good to go. Otherwise, let me know it was the wrong password. So that's how you would hash your passwords and verify that hashed version against your stored version in the database. And don't worry, we're going to be building a login form coming up and basically trying this out in real time with an actual database. So we'll see you there.